This is unscripted, as are all of my videos, as anybody who's watched them will know. Uh, why am I recording this video? Well, for a couple of reasons. I was gone away from home this past weekend, and over the course of the weekend, my channel passed 500 subscribers. That's a landmark that doesn't really mean anything. In the grand scheme of things, I don't do this channel to make money, which is good because I don't make money. I think I need another 500 subscribers before I even start getting fractions of pennies on the view. Now, YouTube still puts ads in my video, even though they don't compensate me. That's something that I find a little disreputable, but that's the situation I'm in. Anyway, 500 subscribers. I think that's a lot. Now, I know, because I see the statistics on my videos, that 500 subscribers are not watching my videos. I don't even know if half of those subscribers are real people or not. Most of my videos lately they've been doing pretty well. I've had a few videos hitting like the 60 mark. A couple of them have gone over 100. Generally speaking, a lot of my videos, they get like 20 or 30 views, and that's it. Whatever. I understand. This couldn't easily be a less effort channel. I don't put any effort into this channel. I don't script, except a couple of times where I had it a little outline on a piece of paper. But generally, I don't script. I do not edit. I'm filming this on a burner phone. This is not the kind of channel that should be garnering a huge audience, So I think 500 subscribers is pretty awesome. Thank you to people who have subscribed. I really appreciate that. Also, thank you to people who comment on my videos, which I really appreciate because, otherwise I'm just screaming into the void, and sometimes you like to hear the void scream back a little. So that's one thing. 500 subscribers. Huzzah! I don't have confetti, or I would throw it in front of the camera and say something about magic. But, I guess I should make the 500 subscriber thing special in some way or other. So what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about the Ringworld RPG from Chaosium from 1984, if I'm remembering my dates correctly. This was a gift a friend of mine got for me just a few months back. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. And this was a game that I had been wanting to get my hands on for a really, really long time. There are a couple others out there, that are like now my holy grail. They were like secondary thought things, but this was my holy grail. Like when people said, what's that one thing that you regret not being able to get? This was it. So now I have it. And I just finished reading it. And I have a lot of thoughts about it. And I'm going to talk about it for a little bit. I'm currently at the 4-minute mark. This thing runs out in about 25 minutes. And I don't know if I'll make it that far. You'll know better than me because you'll see the time stamp or whatever, the deuce in there. But I'm going to run my mouth about it because that's what I do. This is based on Larry Niven's Ringworld novels as well as his known space short stories and novels as existed in 1984. Larry Niven, I feel like he was one of those guys who, when I was growing up and reading science fiction and really getting into it, still working on the sequence. I say still, you won't have seen the video where I started on the sequence. You'll see a video later where I talk about this. Anyway, I'm going to drink a little bit more. Allergies are terrible this year, so a little beer will put that fire out. So when I was reading a lot of science fiction as a kid, Larry Niven was kind of a big deal. Ringworld was a big deal. And, you know, you would see his books in the bookstores. You'd see him in the used bookstores. I used to buy at Pro Libris in Bangor, Maine. I used to get my copies of all the Larry Niven books I could get my hands on. I read him. I read Alan Dean Foster. You know, the sci-fi of the 70s and 80s was really my jam. I loved it. I loved a lot of other stuff too. Andre Norton was a big one before she started just writing about cats. But I really, really, really responded to Niven and particularly to Ringworld. The sense of scale was part of it for me in Ringworld. The Ringworld itself, it was just such an amazing, mind-blowing thing at that time for me to read. And I loved it. And I loved the storytelling potential. And you probably can't see it in the writing that I have published so far, links below, but the Conquest of the Sphere setting owes a lot to Larry Niven and to the Ringworld. And I know I mentioned that in the introduction to my Four Tales, links below, but it does. It owes a lot to Niven, even though you wouldn't know it to read it, because stylistically, or at least when I got started writing them, I was really inspired more by Robert E. Howard and stuff like that. Yeah, and I don't know that you necessarily see a lot of that in the stories in that collection, but conceptually, it goes back to Niven and some others. So what do we have here with this game? This was put out by Chaosium, 1984. It uses their basic role-playing system and a little bit of a modified version of it, as they often did, but pretty straightforward. It's a great mechanic. I love it. And this gives you the opportunity to explore this just phenomenal setting. What I like is it does go into, in the Explorer's Guide, if I remember correctly, there are 4 books: Explorer's Guide, Technology Guide, Creature Book, and Game Master's Book. And the Explorer's Guide, I believe, goes into some detail on all the various, at least the major planets that are in known space, at least in the human part of things. You have the other groups out there. You have the Kazin, you have the puppeteers and all of them. But it deals with the general universe, which is great. I mean, it's a cool sci-fi setting, a great sandbox that you could play in. I think it's just marvelous with lots of really cool and wild ideas. It's got some neat aliens. It's got some really cool setting, just some really weird stuff, and some great deep time stuff, because the known space history is so important to it. Because what you're dealing with the Ringworld and with humanity and with all these other things out there, there's all these deeper layers in the setting. And it's stuff that now has become kind of old hat, but at the time it was not necessarily as much so. That you have this idea of there was this species that spread out and seeded for not altruistic reasons, seeded life throughout a big chunk of the galaxy. It died. Others rose up. One of those rose up and did something similar, but for other reasons. And at some point along the line, somebody built the Ringworld, and it's populated by beings or creatures sometimes that are largely related to humanity, which that's one of the things that's like really wild about Ringworld, is that because of some stuff that went on here, you basically had humans and or proto-humans seated on this gigantic, enormous Ringworld with, thousands upon thousands, I think it's literally millions of Earth surface amounts of space. And those critters, they spread out and diversified and filled niches. So you have things that are related to humans, and they're all listed just as hominid. But these things that are related to humans, but they are not human, and they are filling some really strange niches, like, not quite bats, but, predators and sea creatures and all these sort of things. And they're all descended from the same things, the same peoples that we humans are descended from. So it's really sort of fascinating. But anyway, what you have, you have the Explorer's Book. This goes into a lot of stuff for the universe and what players would know. And it's important for the GM. Now, what you will see here, and you can really see it, is this is just a wall of text. And that's one of the things that I noticed over the course of this. And this is like, it's not even 200 pages, I don't think, between these 4 books. And if you just took the text from these books and you spaced it out and formatted it in such a way that contemporary books are written, and you added normal amounts of, not even copious amounts, just normal amounts of artwork, expected amounts of artwork, this would easily be like a 500-page book. There is so much information crammed into these pages in these 3-column text walls. It's why it took me, I was working on the Game Master's book. I just picked away at this book for, I think, the last 3 weeks. That sounds about right. Obviously I wasn't reading it straight through, but I would just read a couple of pages and then put it up for a couple of days because it was just so much, especially after having read the first 3. But it's great gameable material. It's awesome. And it is, and why I put these things out, because I think of the art of John Harris and Chris Foss. When you look at this, like, sci-fi on an absolutely colossal scale, that to me is one of the sort of appeals of Niven and of Known Space and the Ringworld. It's this sense of being lost in scale that I just find really fascinating. And also just the glorious wildness of this era of artwork, which I felt was captured in a lot of the writing, especially in the 70s and into the 80s. There's just something really cool going on. That's a favorite of mine. I love this image up here. Reminds me of Philip Reeves' Traction Cities. So, anyway, just thinking about this artwork. I love it. I'm going to probably stare at these books for another hour or two tonight. It got me to thinking about various things gaming-wise, and how, I don't think that Niven has really read all that much anymore. He's still alive. I don't think he's put anything new out in a while. There was a new trilogy of Ringworld novels written by somebody else that he either signed off on or, edited, or I don't know what, or maybe he gave somebody an idea. I don't know what, but I didn't read them. I haven't read them. I don't think I've actually read past Ringworld Throne, and I think there are a few other books. And I was thinking I had read them more recently, but I think it's been 25 or 30 years since the last time I read a Ringworld novel. I reread beginning of this year, I reread Protector, which was one I came to much later, and I didn't realize is actually so core to the Known Space stuff and to the Ringworld concept, even though it's not mentioned in the novel. But anyway, getting to the point that I don't think people are really reading Niven all that much anymore. I don't hear his name bandied about certainly not in younger sci-fi readers. I don't know if Ringworld is still in production. I would love to see. It's one of those books I would love to see in one of those like Barnes and Noble leather-bound editions. Do like the first two or first, really probably the first two Ringworld novels would make the most sense. I was just watching somebody's video. I can't remember where it is, so I can't even link it below. Who they were talking about Ringworld and how the second book, which I think is Ringworld Engineers, if I'm remembering right, was Niven's response to a bunch of scientists' response to his first book. You know, like in Ringworld, people liked it so much, and this was very much the fandom of that time. It was the same kind of pedantry without being so toxic and aggressive. Generally, speaking in generalizations, because there could definitely be toxic and aggressive people then, but I feel like the pedantry was a little bit more of an eye roll causing thing as opposed to a move out of state causing thing. But he wrote Ringworld. It won a bunch of awards. A bunch of sciencey nerds came and said, hey, look, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't make sense, this part over here is, whatever. And so he wrote the second book to address a lot of their problems and to put a story reason into why those things existed. That's my understanding of it. I'm going to go back and reread them. It's been so long, and I remember loving both of them quite a bit. Now, I'm saying all of that because Niven is not a perfect writer. And I say that for a bunch of reasons. His actual writing is fine. It's solid. His characters are okay. The way he puts words together is functional. It's not necessarily wonderfully artistic. It doesn't necessarily fill you with joy to read the words or incite passion in you. But the ideas are where it's at, and the ideas are there to make your brain explode, which is something that I particularly love. Going back to reading Margaret L'Engle when I was a kid, reading A Wrinkle in Time and a couple of the follow-up books to that, and just having my brain blow up time and again, and it was marvelous. And so I think about Niven. He's fine. He's a solid writer, but he's an idea guy. But his books, particularly Ringworld, and really as the Ringworld books go on, and I remember this being really bad in Ringworld Throne, I think, the third book, he lets in his bizarre, everybody puts their fetishes and their weird ideas and their political pet concepts and everything like that. They all fit those into the books. And anybody who tells you that a book isn't political doesn't understand writing and doesn't understand politics. But Niven sneaks in, doesn't really sneak in, drives a train of some weird stuff into it, and it just does not work. And I actually think that the concept is interesting. You have this giant world with all kinds of these species, all grown from humanity, all part of humanity. They are, a lot of them are hominids. They're all our cousins. And the idea is that on this world, amongst certain elements of them, that when they meet, in order to diffuse tensions between them and all this sort of thing, they engage in this essentially orgies, but like stylized and not quite religious, but certainly ritual orgy sexual encounters. So that's fine. It's an interesting idea, and I think as it's presented in the game for the most part, as it's presented, I think, in the first book, certainly, it's this sort of idea of like, it's not done by everybody. It's possibly originated with a certain group of people who used it as an element of control in a sort of a Benny Gesserit sort of way. So it's okay, whatever. But then as the books went on and it just became like this whole thing, it was just like weird and annoying, and it started to become like Quentin Tarantino and Feet. So, just know that's in there. And as the books go on, it's like more in there. But like, it's not like it's done in any, it's just there without being even interesting. Anyway. So obviously that's one of those things that you may or may not want to bring to your game. Something I wanted to mention though about Niven, not a perfect writer, and not everything's going to translate really well to games. However, that said, I think that the Ringworld setting would translate amazingly well to games. There's some other stuff. There's like little standees and reference sheets, which is kind of cool. But what I was kind of getting at when I was talking about Niven not being read particularly anymore is that I really would love to see a second edition of Ringworld. And I'd love to see it for a lot of reasons. I had wanted to see it before because I couldn't get my hands on the first edition. I want to see it now because there is so much in this that is so good and so cool and so gameable and such a really great setting that is just calling out for stories and campaigns and adventures and just all kinds of different stuff with lots of great ideas. And basic role-playing is a fantastic system to use for it. But this is so 1984. And I don't mean that like the Orwell novel. I mean that as like the game design. This is, only 10 years into this hobby really being catalyzed into a thing. Not to say that it didn't exist before, but really catalyzed in, I think it's 74, if I'm getting my dates right, maybe it's 72, I don't care. But this is only about a decade of gaming, and it has a lot of the problems with that time. Some of it's in the writing, but a lot of it is in the design. A lot of it is in the design. I specifically want to point out the creature book, because this is where it got really bad. Not only do a lot of these creatures that you kind of really want to see images of, most of them have no art. But also, let me see if I can find one of the examples that was especially bad about this. Because you just have these charts randomly in these pages. I think it was like toward the end. Yeah. So you have this, okay, we have the muck ogres, and it goes on, and it talks about them, and it goes, it comes down, there's a chart for them, there's a chart for some other things, and then you get to these sea people, and then the sea people section like starts down here, and goes, I don't know where, and the valley people, and then the vampire starts mid-thing here. It's just really bad, hard to follow design. Here, like, there's stat blocks, but then two different stat blocks. Where's the creature? There's a description in here, but it's the description for the Dak, which is, that's just all this, but then this is another thing, and this is this. Or no, this isn't even on this page. It's really awful layout. And I would love to see a new edition of this with contemporary layout and art. Lots and lots of art, because there's so much great visual in Niven's work, and there's just not much. The art that's in here is nice. I like the line drawings. I actually like black and white line drawings for interiors on games. I don't have a problem with that at all, and I like this style. Is it the most amazing artwork in the world? No, but I like it, and I'd be fine with that. There just needs to be more than one every 20 or 30 pages, I mean, that's fine, but that's lost. And, and there's nothing on the pages before or after. So I would love to see a second edition. I unfortunately don't think that will happen. I don't know what the rights are. I don't know where Chaosium is. I don't think Chaosium's necessarily particularly interested in doing a second edition of this, and I can't blame them. I mean, financially, why would you? But boy, I'd love somebody out there who is passionate about game design and likes sci-fi a little bit on the harder side as opposed to your Star Wars, but more like, this is more akin to Traveler and more, not even Star Trek, but I guess, I don't know. I always think of The Expanse when I'm thinking about harder sci-fi these days, and I only made it to the first season, so I don't really even know about The Expanse, but it's harder sci-fi, like Foundation, that kind of thing, because they do have psychic powers and that sort of thing, but there's a lot of other stuff that's pretty solidly hard sci-fi. And I'd just really like to see that. I don't have the skills or the wherewithal to do it myself, and I wish I did. But anyway, I thought it was really cool. I think it is a great setting. I think this is a very cool game. I think Chaosium did a really awesome thing. I think it just was at the wrong time, and I don't know if there was ever a right time. If it were done today, I think it would be done better, but I don't think it would sell any better. And I don't think it sold all that well back then when Niven was still a well-known writer. I mean, they did this, and they did, like, The Companion, which now is another Holy Grail thing for me. But they did this, and they did The Companion, and that was it, really. So, I suspect that it was not a very financially successful thing. So would a new edition be? Probably not. But, boy, would it be swell, especially with the new basic role-playing that's now on that, I think it's the Orc license or something like that. Some driven fan out there, if they wanted to, again, and I don't know how you get the rights from Niven or, whatever. I don't even know if he cares or if he'd sell it, so who knows. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this. My very blithery thoughts, because I am tired and halfway through this beer, so that's not what's causing this. But I wanted to thank you again for 500 subscribers. That's weird to me that 500 people have signed up to follow me, but thank you. And, I would say let me know what you want to see in the future, but I mean, you're going to see the stuff that I've been putting out in the past. This is what I do, folks. This is basically all I got. I'm not going to say I'll never upgrade because I need a new phone, so my new phone might have a better camera on it. But let's be honest, I'm not going to be putting a lot more effort into this channel than I already have. So if you've enjoyed the journey so far, awesome. And, like, subscribe, and all the other usual stuff. And maybe in another, 5 or 6 years, I'll get to 1,000. All right. Take care.